The focus of today's discussion will be on how charity boards can help their organization survive, sustain, or even leapfrog. Yeah, this is in the midst of multiple polarities. And I won't mention them because Minister has already mentioned them to a certain extent. Minister has done that as well. Yeah, but we are talking about high complexities and high level of human anxieties. Yeah, please also note that sustainability is not just about money. Yeah, but it's about social human capital, knowledge capital, as well as organizational capacity and capabilities. I will start by asking a question, and I would like to encourage every one of you to post your questions. We may not answer everything, but depending on what's outstanding, I may request the panelists to, well, we will organize another small session to answer perhaps the operational questions. Yeah, so for today, we'll stick to the board questions and the more strategic level ones. Now, Chi Ming, let's start with you. Yeah, recovering from a crisis requires a crisis-savvy board. Melissa has not mentioned the final details, but in the board leadership survey, we have found out that board renewal continues to be a lingering issue in the sector. Now, two data points are important. 2/3 of the boards do not have a renewal plan, and half of the board does not have a term limit for board chairs. Chi Ming, if this trend continues, what harm does it pose to a healthy recovery or even in managing future crises? Over to you, Chi Ming.
Morning, can you guys hear me?
Yes, very well, Chi Ming.
Glad to be here, and thanks, Teresa, for that challenging question, which is both a very easy one and a very difficult one. So we all know that these are not ordinary times. We are in the midst of a pandemic, and all charities, we need to really retune. We need to review our existing mission. We need to look very intensely at the finance bit, the funding bit. And there's also a need to evaluate the operational risk. So the previous speakers would have mentioned all of this. And we all know that it is the board that oversees. It is the board that sets the direction. And chairman is the captain. So I won't address whether there is a greater need now in today's context to set term limits for the board and chairman. Rather, let's look at the possible consequences if there is no regular renewal in today's context. So firstly, staleness, lack of new perspective. We have touched on this before, previous speakers. You see, when the passion starts to wane, because one has been a director or chairman for too long, the effectiveness of the board will go down because it will become too routine. I repose a question to participants here. If your board's meeting agenda has remained the same in these challenging times, let me put it to you. Something must be wrong there because refocusing is needed. So, especially in today's context, when things are moving fast and decisions have to be taken at perhaps commercial speed rather than NPO speed, we really need to renew perhaps faster. And by the way, some studies actually say having board members with commercial experience at NPOs is better during a crisis like this, but I suspect this warrants a separate discussion. The second bit I think is really telling is this thing called missing out on high tech. So Albert Einstein once said, if you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got. Well, we got COVID. And by now, most, if not all, will agree that without the innovations, without the high tech, we would be worse off. Look at the speed of adoption because of COVID. because of necessity pushing us to adopt fast. Guess what? Guess which generation is moving faster in terms of technology and innovation? So would we not be missing out without having earlier opportunities to bring the relevant younger ones on board as board members? We need to really think a little bit about that. Thirdly, no regular renewal will result in slower adoption of board diversity. I don't think I want to elaborate on that anymore. Many studies out there expounding the merits of diversity. Last but not least, sometimes this thing called ownership might creep in if one has been a chairman or board member for too long. And this can result in unintended intimidation of new board members, barrier to new ideas. And okay, maybe I should ask for forgiveness for not using nicer words. So I guess, Teresa, time to stop when one has to apologize. I'll stop here.
It's all right, no need for apology. How about the rest of the panel? Would you like to supplement on what Jimmy has just shared with us? Essentially, he talks about renewal, bringing new perspectives to the board in terms of perhaps a value creation angle, a digital angle, as well as a diversity angle. And on the flip side, an ownership creep, yeah, which leads to bias and possession of how the charity progresses. I'd like to hear from any of the other panels if you have any additional points.
Yeah, can I chime in here, Teresa?
Sure, Anita, please.
Leadership at this point in time really has to be very decisive and clear, especially when we're in a time of crisis. And so we need board lead to be able to react and respond quickly to the situation. And communication is really key. So in as much as we talk about board renewal, I think that is absolutely necessary and we shouldn't be stuck in our ways. But when we are in the moment, these are the things which are necessary for all our NPOs. We need the direction, we need to be able to respond, and we need to adapt and accept change.
Yes, and I would like to perhaps add to that. Responding is one, but also trying to proact the position. And if I can take it one step further, if this so-called delay trend continues, it would lead to speed bumps as charities transform themselves into what we call SSA 3.0 in the new normal. Boards may be adequately skilled, may not rather be adequately skilled to drive transformation processes, as a journey may require digital augmentation of processes. I think we spoke about this morning about the use of big data, IoT, artificial intelligence, the building out of e-commerce platforms, all this referring to capabilities that would be stifled if boards don't renew themselves.
Okay, so we've got additional perspective on digitization as well as a high emphasis on communications by Anita. Pok Kwang, I would like to direct a question to you. Since you're a member of the Charity Council, do you think a firmer stand on board renewal will serve the purpose of more renewals? Why and why not?
Okay, thanks very much, Teresa. Yeah, I think we should make a stand on this because it's board renewal and diversity is one of those basic pillars of good governance. Every board, I think, should have clearly defined limits on how long a member can serve, especially for key positions like the chairman, the general secretary, and the treasurer. Of course, in reality, we know that this has been an issue faced by the Charity Council. And as the numbers showed just now, many boards are still not doing it, especially religious charities, founded by religious leaders. To put it bluntly, many of those very small charities, the leader, in effect, is the charity, and the charity would flounder without those leaders. So we have had to allow many of them to carry on, but I think we insist that they give a reason why you know, the chairman has had to stay so long. And we also insist, I think, that the other board members should rotate. I think we should give all these boards a deadline, a certain number of years, you know, to comply. Should we have a firmer stance? I think obviously that you need to balance, strike a balance between being firm and recognizing the reality on the ground. But you know, sometimes you need to be firm to be kind. Let me cite an example. I was involved in a charity many years ago, and you know, with many of these small charities and organizations, the executive in charge does a variety of things. You know, he knows the charity inside out, and you want to give him a free hand to do all these things because you don't want to be too bureaucratic about your procedure. And since he knows the ins and outs, over time you give him even freer and freer hand to do all those things. And you know, because he's so good in doing it. But in this case, unfortunately, the story didn't end well. You know, there was a bit of a monkey business, and he was found out. So thinking about what happened, I realized that when you give someone too much power and authority without enough checks, then the temptation for the person to break the rules might be too great. And you have inadvertently created that situation. And you're not doing him a favor. In fact, you have created that situation for him. So I think it's the same with board renewal. You know, you may think that, oh, you know, this chairman or this person has been doing such a great job, he should carry on. You know, but there are pitfalls and there are consequences, and you need to watch them. And I think the other benefit about having term limits is that it affects the behavior and motivation of the board members. You know, you are coming in for only 5 or 6 years. You have that period to do whatever you want, and you know, most people come in with a passion for doing something, and it shapes the behavior of the board. If it's open-ended and there's no time limit, then I think, you know, you might end in a situation where there is, you know, less motivation and less energy.
All right, thank you for that answer. I have a question from Andrew Pang, which is along the same line of questioning. What is causing charities to withhold or delay board renewal? Is it a matter of a lack of talent or really a matter of the fear of letting go? Does any of the panel members have a view on this? Just a very quick answer to that, because the question is flowing in the same way.
Risa, let me share my views. There are fewer advantages for not having term limits than advantages. So I just touch on the two. Number one, there might be instances where specific history, specific knowledge is important, and this one should not be underestimated in certain charities. Leave that one side. The second really advantage is that, or disadvantage if you implement term limits, would be the fact that if a director or a chairman has the most influential connection in terms of fundraising, would the departure of the director or chairman cause the charity to lose that source or sources? Now, in this modern days and age, one can argue for and against, but it can be an issue as well. I'm a strong supporter of term limits, but I thought I'll just bring this up for discussion.
Okay, so in answer to Andrew Pang's question, it is based on the context of the charity. I'd like to move on to Samuel Lim's question and direct it to Anita. For small charities, it is difficult to get people to volunteer in boards. The other large charities have high profile. So my question to Anita as the sector enabler in NCSS, how does NCSS help the smaller charity boards balance their operational challenges as well as the need for strategic board renewal.
Thanks, Teresa. I think those two challenges that you highlighted have to be tackled concurrently. Of course, it's easier said than done, and the devil is in the details. But let me talk a little bit about the operational challenges. And they, for NPOs, especially the smaller ones, you know, the manpower and capability and the resourcing of them is a real challenge. And of course, leadership. And leadership here, I mean leadership both at management level as well as board level. And most importantly, it's board mindset. So I think firstly, for especially the smaller charities, there must be a mindset to change and to renewal. A lot of times the chairman might be a founder chairman and very, very closely linked and emotionally tied to the charity that he or she may have been in on the ground from the start. But there is a thinking that at some stage, you know, it's really bringing in fresh blood. The challenge is how to do that. The tendency is to do it by word of mouth and just bringing in new people who are your friends. So there's a lot of groupthink that goes on. But I especially think that in a time like this, there needs to be a greater openness to bringing in people with different skill set, especially at board leadership level and at management level. And so that change has to start at board level. For some charities, the cause may be easier to bring people in, and there are others I acknowledge which are harder. And that's where, you know, we have, you know, CNPL who can help with board match. That is a very, very practical direction that I would point charities to go to CNPL to get their assistance. And NCSS to a certain degree will help NCSS's board members as well in order to help them bring in the right type of people and the leadership. The other part is really how do we enable our agencies to respond to these operational challenges? So there are a few things that NCSS has put in place. And one part I'll talk about is really resourcing, because without the money, how do you do a lot of things that you want to do at this point in time, especially in the journey of digital transformation? So in fact, the second tranche of the Invictus Fund will be launched in about a week's time or so. And I would really encourage all of you to look out for that because that will really provide some very, very clear and good funding, especially for areas of transformational work that you want to do, especially if it's to do with digitalization. And we rolled out the enhanced volunteer management funding scheme recently. Actually, the response to it was very good. And that was really to help our charities have dedicated volunteer managers. And the other thing is, of course, there's training. And a lot of the courses are supported by the SSG and the VCF training grants. So I would point to that, as well as really just looking to CNPL, NVPC, NCSS for help if you really do need people to come in to help refresh your board.
Okay, thank you, Anita. And you mentioned board match, which just leads on to a question for Melissa, because Samuel Lim has asked about board match. Kok Wan Chua has also asked about recruitment of directors, you know, term limits, etc. And Aaron has asked about how to determine the right set of required skills for the boards and committee members. So Melissa, I would just like to consolidate all these questions into one, which is if NVPC has to build a database of crisis recovery competencies, what would be your plans to do it, and how can you encourage the charity to go to board match to renew themselves? Melissa?
Thanks so much. I think for us, you know, board matches out there, and the good part of it is that actually there's literally hundreds of people, amazing, talented professionals, you know, that have put themselves forward to say, yes, I'd like to serve on a board, and we work with them to try to assess their skills and assess their potential fit, because, you know, it's also about fit. You know, to be able to connect with and serve the various charities there too. We also try and work on helping them get the mindset right. you know, this idea that they shouldn't just be thinking, oh, there's a fixed type of charity that I want, or, you know, I have these following expectations. We really try and manage their expectations so that we come in, you know, as professionals thinking about how we can serve and how we can learn, and not how we're there to just tell other people, you know, what to do because we know better. So I think that sort of preparation part is very, very, you know, important. I think if we're humble, you know, we will all go farther, right? I think that the challenge, you know, is not so much do we have enough people or the right people or the right types of competencies. I mean, most professionals are having to deal with this adjustment and digital transformation and the rest of that in their day jobs, you know. So this is a little bit to what Chu-Ming said about having more commercial people actually being of good value actually on nonprofit boards in times of crisis. Is, you know, they're dealing with this 24/7 like anyway. But I think that the bigger challenge, I think, which was alluded to earlier too, is that, you know, sometimes there is a sort of echo chamber type of internal in-group, you know, kind of a culture on charities, which make it less friendly or even more hostile, you know, for new groups to actually feel welcomed or even just be invited onto the board. And I mean, I'd say for myself too, because I'm a chairman founder actually of a group too. It was founded 15 years ago. I've been the chairman for 6 years. I've been telling them I'm going to leave, and it's, you know, it freaks everybody out. But I think what's key about that is, and I'm thinking maybe I should start a little movement. We should invite like other founder chairmen to join me in our transition, you know, plans. We can be a support group to one another. As we make,
I'm sure that suggestion is accepted enthusiastically, Melissa.
And still be big supporters of the organization.
Right. Okay, I have got many questions on term limits by Verena Desai. What term limits would you suggest? And So King Tan supports term limits. He was asking if board member takes a break in between terms, and they can always come back again. I would like to address this question on term limits to Mervyn. Yeah, you're a committee member with SIAS, and you interact with a lot of private sector boards as well as investors. And even for myself, many charities have given me justification as to why their boards and their chairs should be over-serving. Now, Mervyn, I'd like to hear from you, what lessons can we draw from the private sector? As you know, the 9-year term limit for independent directors will be mandated very, very soon. So what are the lessons there for charities? Mervyn?
Thank you, Teresa. Yes, having served in the corporate sector and now as CEO of a Christian halfway house, I do see unique differences that distinguish corporate from charity boards. I think one notable difference is that corporates pay fees to the directors, but board members of charities, they serve pro bono. So this has resulted in different justifications for chair and board members staying beyond their terms. The usual justifications given by corporates is members having valuable domain knowledge, and this makes them somewhat indispensable. In the case of charities, however, the key reason is that it's really not so easy to find people willing and committed to serve, and because you can't buy these skill sets, the natural tendency is for charities to cling on tightly to their members. So notwithstanding the above difference, one thing is common, and that is renewal and succession take time and must begin early. I see two broad reasons for wanting renewal. The first is independence, and the other, which I feel is more critical, and that is to build capability, which we have heard this morning, at the board level as the charity transforms into what I refer to as SSA 3.0 in the new normal. Let me get to the issue of independence first. As members serve pro bono on charity boards, independence is, I feel, less of an issue. However, there may be instances where this could be compromised, such as having an executive and salaried member on the board. So to avoid this, only non-executives should serve on charity boards, or, as what Teresa has mentioned, being a board member for more than 9 years, noting that the 9-year rule will kick in for IDs in ListCos next year, where directors would not be advised to stay beyond their term. To address this, we can draw perhaps some lessons from the private sector, namely yearly rotation of 1/3 of members longer serving on boards, or re-election provisions where the term of office for each member could be, say, 2 years, or retiring members after 70 years of age, subject to yearly re-election. Like the corporate sector, the nomination committee can incorporate such rules in the charity's constitution to facilitate churn at the board level. Furthermore, the nomination committee's annual evaluation of board performance can be a powerful signal that the board is committed to effective and accountable leadership. At a minimum, the exercise can involve assessing their effectiveness acting as a whole board. Typically, it would include assessing the effectiveness of the chairman and also a peer review of each other. I'll now move on to the second more important reason for board renewal in times of crisis, and that is building capabilities and leveraging on the board's diverse strength to future-proof it. This, I feel, is crucial for both corporate and charity boards. And while you can pay the desired fees to secure the relevant skills on corporate boards, for charity boards, members with the desired capabilities must firstly have the self-drive. They must have the passion to want to serve. NPOs must align members' passion with the vision and the mission of the organization to stay long-term oriented. So the member must also be able to sustain that level of passion. Hence, not only is passion necessary, but it must also come with passion, with compassion and empathy. Compassion and empathy, yes. Thank
you, Mervyn. I've just been told by the organizer that we have to wrap up our session. Well, you know why? Because we were 30 minutes delayed. A question from Kwek Chun Hong. Yeah, and this talks about collaboration. Yeah, collaboration across SSAs, across the sector. What are some system, board, or policy changes that can be made to expedite ground collaborations and even formation of alliances? Just a quick thought from each panel member, please. What are some system, board, or policy changes that can be made to expedite ground level collaborations?
Hi, Teresa. Just very quickly, I really feel that funding and resourcing is a great lever to help organizations. So that's part of the work that we're doing in NCSS, where really to encourage charities to work collectively. We're working through different types of funding schemes to see how we can do that, to encourage charities to work together, especially if we take a more holistic approach to the people whom we serve.
All right, thank you. Who else, please?
Teresa, let me come in. Collaboration, two things, first from the cost side of doing things, and the second bit relating to new ideas. From the cost side of doing things, I think it would be useful for the charity to look at the missions, identify similar charities with similar mission, and see whether they can do things on a larger scale to make it more effective from the cost angle. In terms of new ideas, there is always scope to have what we call a peer review. You can invite a separate set of board members to exchange, have a sit-down session just to share the ideas. I think the regulators as well as the NPOs should really explore this a little bit more. I stop there.
Right.
Can I jump in? And,
yes.
Yeah, I just want to make a plug for charities sharing stories. We talk a lot about collaboration in the hard areas like data and all that, but a crisis is the best time for the community to share stories, personal experiences of volunteers, of donors, or beneficiaries. So I was involved in the Liver Project a few months ago. We wanted to encourage Singaporeans to tell stories of their experiences in the pandemic. And I was very fortunate to get the Majority Trust, which is a philanthropic organization, to fund it. So we give monthly prizes to the best stories and the best commentaries. And in looking out for these stories, I came across a wide range of people who were sharing stories of how the pandemic affected them. Grab delivery, food drivers, chefs, people helping migrant workers, and so on. So when we share our stories, I think we help to build a shared experience, an interconnectedness, and a sense of community, that we are all in this together. So I feel that charities should do a lot more of this, write about their experiences, the stories that I'm sure many of their volunteers and donors have shared in the community. And in this way, when we all understand what we are all going through, the other forms of collaboration will follow.
All right, thank you. I really do have to end this session, and I want to wrap it up with a response from Melissa to Hope Kwang's comments about stories. It's a great idea. Stories are data with a soul. And I think that would be a great way to end this panel session. Let's remember that the charity sector is one with a soul, and we are the one who create that. So with that, thank you, Anita, Melissa, Marvin, Chin Meng, and Hope Kwang.